you deal with a level of daily stress that would break most people. It beats you down to submission all the time. A lot of people who are new to the game don't realize the mental, physical, sometimes even spiritual toll it takes to be an entrepreneur.
Because part of entrepreneurship is trialing, maybe failing, iterating for sure, but definitely going again. You always want to be chasing the curve, but you don't want to fall too far behind it.
Be grateful for what you have, but never be satisfied with what you can achieve. I want to be able to break a cycle.
So you do need to have the mindset, this is down to me. To me, it never feels like pain. To me, it feels like an opportunity to grow.
Finding the right mentor is one of the most underrated superpowers you can have as a business owner.
No pain, no gain. Might be a bit controversial to say that. What is it you're trying to do? Do you have a market for it? How are you going to sell it? All of that sort of stuff. You need to think it through.
We made it.
Just about.
Episode 2. Not this episode 2, we made it to this part of the day.
Yeah, well, I'm supposed to be on the train back by now, so.
That is true. But this is the nature of content. For those who are interested, this is a picture of Salman prior to shooting, because we've been that exhausted. Salman also with YouTube content, the shorts, and I'm seeing others.
To be fair, you've not slept all night, so.
No, I haven't. I haven't slept for the past 3 days. Part of the unorthodox founder journey is to really showcase like genuinely how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is like for me, so at the studio we've had back-to-back shoots nearly all days on Sunday, Monday. Today we're recording Tuesday. And to give you context, that what we want to do is show a lot more behind the scenes about what we do on a. Even though we do this on a month, we share that insights. And the recent story was we had a 4-person podcast where we are right now. So if you look at the wide, so I'm looking at you now. We had 4 people sitting here, but we only had 3 mics. So we had 3 of these. And I found that out the night before we were supposed to shoot. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, my co-founder went on eBay, and then we managed to find somebody at 6 o'clock in the morning on the day of recording in Peterborough. And we're based in Leicester. So I had to go early morning, drive all the way down, 1 hour, 20 minutes there and back to pick up one of these for a podcast shoot literally 15 minutes later by the time I got back to Leicester. And if I didn't get it, it would cause a lot of ramifications in terms of reputation. The client might not have been happy, they might have understood, but again, it's not great service, So you sometimes you figure these things out because you don't realize, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Like, I thought we had 4 mics, but when you're that busy, sleep deprived, having a newborn, running 2 companies, you're gonna forget something.
It's completely understandable.
4 founders is, but for those who are new, this is how it is. This is genuinely the reality. And even for yourself, you mentioned on the first episode, which was part of the trailer, that you were feeling you had an anxiety attack because of all the stuff going on.
You could just copy paste that into this one, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Because that's what I was feeling like on Saturday and Sunday. Looking ahead to this week, I think I was up all night on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it was. Times kind of blurred. Scripting for today.
Yeah.
And then, on work yesterday, here today. Tomorrow I'm in another city. Back to the office on Thursday. So
it doesn't end. And not that this is what we signed up for, right? In terms of that's the brutal reality of genuine for the large majority of people who have service-based businesses like we do. That's the hard grind, especially even though I'm past early on in my phase, there's probably a lot more teething. But even at your level, you mentioned off camera that the level of issues are still there. It's probably higher, bigger because it's a bigger team, big clients. It's just not easy.
let me ask you something. Would you change it?
No, for sure. But when a lot of entrepreneurs who get asked that question, they'll say that, wouldn't change it. I love to grind. It's because you don't want to build impact, or it's for those beyond us. But I think also for me it's genuinely all I've ever known, right? Stress, things are always uncertain. Back in my PhD days, which is like the origin of where all this started in terms of work, right?
Yeah.
PhD after my degree, that was even though it was a degree. So since then, uncertainty, stress, patience, perseverance, always been there. So it's generally, for me, it's not healthy, and we'll come to that in the rest of the pod. But for me, I would be agitated if I didn't have the chaos. Obviously, we have systems and processes, of course, but with what I just mentioned, that's a uncertainty with entrepreneurship, very common. But I can't see myself now being in a regimental, rigid profession. I'm not saying job, because another area could be like that.
I mean, that's the key difference between yourself and me, right? You've not ever had a job.
No, so I
Let's
had
say.
correction.
Yeah.
I used to work in the cinema as an usher. So I used to, like, rip the tickets,
Yeah.
clean the auditorium. So that was obviously a
How old were
part-time
you
job.
when you did that?
So I was 20, 21.
Okay.
So end of
Uni
first
days.
degree, the end of first degree, starting my PhD.
Yeah.
And funny enough, back then, now that you mentioned it, I used to, because cinema, I used to work from like 6 o'clock genuinely onwards. Work during the day, but generally my shifts were in the evening.
Yeah.
So I used to finish at the university and I leave an experiment running, then come to work, and then work till sometime 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and then go home and then carry on. And it was that cycle.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for about 7, 8 months in my first degree, then stopped, like less because I wanted to focus PhD, then needed more kind of revenue because, like I mentioned last time, I didn't get paid to do my PhD. So they allowed me to come back for some months. Then I couldn't go down to time commitment. So I had to find a way to have a more efficient job, actually being in the university, having something else. So I was like a research assistant. So that was allowing me to work and at the same time. But yeah, that was it. That was essentially my first. Even though I was a paper boy, I was a paper boy. Even though do they even do paper, like people who go give papers around now, or is all AI
I'm not
generated?
sure, to be honest. Well, no.
Yeah, that's what I used to do when I was young.
Question.
I used to go on the bike ground and delivering
Yeah, yeah,
papers
yeah.
for like 10p.
Yeah, yeah.
10p, by the way. Like, you can't get anything for 10p.
Yeah.
You can't get like a
Yeah, yeah.
10p sweet.
So my way of looking at that is, would you change it? Is I would be like, what do you mean when you say would you change it? So for me
Yeah.
personally, it's like, am I happy being in that condition?
Yeah.
No. I want to improve it. But
Yeah.
would I change being in that place overall? No, because this is what got me. Whatever I've done to get here has got me here, and whatever I'm gonna do to get from here to the next bit is what's gonna get me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I want to change and improve, but not necessarily that I wouldn't say though I wouldn't want to be in this situation
Yeah.
per se.
Mm.
But at the same time, I wouldn't want to say that I want to stay in this situation either.
It's like you don't want to. You would change aspects of the life, but not the life itself.
I think one of the very important points I think we were talking about earlier in the morning, right, was around when you are growing as a founder, as a business, there's this curve that you are on, and it's your growth phase. Now, what you got to look at is, my perspective of it is, you always want to be chasing the curve, but you don't want to fall too far behind it in terms of where you want to be. So you should always feel stretched and you should always feel like you need to do more. That's if you want to grow. And if you get to a point where you're happy, you're happy. I'm not built like that, but in a nicest possible way. I'm grateful for where I am. I'm grateful for where I want to get to,
Mm.
but I will always want to do more. I will always want to do more with my time, whether it's business or otherwise. So for me, it's always a case of you're chasing that growth curve, and you should always be slightly behind it, not through design, but through the fact that you're growing so fast that it's in front of you. But you shouldn't ever fall too far behind.
Agreed.
So
It's very similar to a statement that came to me many years ago. That be grateful for what you have, but never be satisfied with what you can achieve. And I think that is a very poignant point on, because you're behind that growth curve, it means you're grateful you got to that point, but you're not just staying there. Because if you stay there, then you can go above it and you just be like cushy, you'll be in that role. But that is that notion of growth change. You got to this point, okay, now what's next?
Yeah.
Whether it's growing or whether it's refining or whether it's optimizing, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're building the team, but you might be refining the service that you're doing so it's even more improved with who you are as well. And that's also an aspect of what we do, which leads you on to the style of what we're going to be doing today, which
Yep.
is, I think it'd be interesting to share some statements around about business and entrepreneurship that we would love to probably give our insights on, because
Yep.
we'll come from different kind of viewpoints.
Yep.
And a lot of people, again, from being unorthodox, you might see our take being quite either controversial, quite insightful, because we're looking at it from a very different lens. And I think it'd be important to share our thoughts
Yeah.
on that.
So the first sort of what are we calling this? Entrepreneurial statements, business truths, whatever.
Yeah, exactly, like harsh entrepreneurial truths.
So
Comment down below what you want this to be.
first one, entrepreneurship is one of the most unhealthy things you can do. The physical and mental toll that never makes it into the highlight reel. Thoughts on it?
A lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Firstly, I agree. I think why I wanted to start off with this is that a lot of people who are new to the game don't realize the mental, physical, sometimes even spiritual toll it takes to be an entrepreneur, to a point where you're full time. Obviously, a lot of people have it as a side hustle. A side hustle job, side hustle business, is very different to it being the one that you pay your bills. If you have dependents, a wife, kids, you being entrepreneur, it's incredibly stressful. Why? I mentioned the story earlier. The stress of having to run around different cities to grab a mic. If I don't do that, there's ramifications, and that happens on a daily basis sometimes. So for those who are entrepreneurs, the stress management, the uncertainties, the cash flow. Like for example, we mentioned offline, the cash flow issue I have now, right now, in this moment in time, which is incredibly difficult. Part of being an entrepreneur, part of being a business owner, and I would go as far as to say that for a large part of entrepreneurship, you don't necessarily genuinely do it for yourself. Largely might be for the impact you want to see in an area. You want to, like, for me, a large reason why I went down this road is I want my family, my future family, my actual family, like my bigger family, my parents, my brothers, stuff. I want to be able to break a cycle so then people beyond me potentially have a better foundation. And you take the brunt of that. So then, it's like the whole notion of you planting a seed for a tree that you will never see. Generally, me running these businesses is for that. It's for now my daughter to have that.
You're setting that roadmap. You're creating the path for the
Exactly.
next generation. Right?
Exactly. And part of entrepreneurship is, it beats you down to submission all the time, and you have to get back up, carry on. It forges you. I think I use that word on purpose. That entrepreneur forges you to be an individual that it's clear as day that you are entrepreneur. Your level of stress tolerance, patience, perseverance, grit. You want to break down all the time. Like you mentioned anxiety before. The amount of stuff I don't want to wake up because I can't cope with what's going to happen.
I know the feeling.
That happens to me all the time.
But it's funny though, right? You have no choice. You have to get up. You have to
Exactly.
go. You can't call in sick. You can't get someone else to do it for you.
And that's the reality. A lot of people don't grasp that concept of you can't copy and paste it for somebody else. You can't ask somebody to jump in. It's you. You bear the brunt of it all.
What I would say with that is though that there's stages of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, of course.
And I think we're in the stage where that is the case. But I think we are traveling towards the other stages where that's not the case in terms of you being the kind of the business or the driver or just because look, we are on this journey of creating our firms, our companies, our businesses, which are going to expand and grow. And part of that, at least for me personally, and I know this is the case for you as well, Amir, is that we want to get to a place where these businesses scale in a sustainable manner. That they're not. I mean, my one of my things I always say is if you've gone ahead and you've set up business and it relies on you doing everything, you've basically created self-employment.
Yeah.
You've employed yourself.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I hate that term or don't, well, maybe that's a strong way of saying it.
Yeah.
I dislike self-employment. I prefer business, entrepreneurship. I even rather say, some other terms than self-employment. Because I think there's a danger when you're in entrepreneurship that you are not really entrepreneurial. You're creating work for yourself to work within it, which I think is fine at the early stages of a business, but you have to have that vision to not be in there longer.
Yes,
in long term.
Yes, that you as much as we know many of our kind of circle friends who have been there, done it to that level, and even they mentioned that it does get perhaps easier at that point, but it comes also with its pros and cons. It comes with other responsibilities where you might not be working on the business a lot, but then you have to employ the right people to look after those things. But one thing that came to mind whilst you were talking is that if you were to, again, the scientist in me is now coming out on this part. If you were to lay down the list of what an entrepreneur feels, so sleepless nights, anxiety, stress, breaking down, feeling sad, hopeless, these are things. And if you were just to list that and give it to somebody would say that you're unwell, that you've got a condition. And if you then say, no, I'm fine, I'm just an entrepreneur, then, it's not something you would then sign up for. If you then mention all of that, there are many pros, of course, like with anything. But if you were to stack up the difficulties we have on it, not to have, again, I'm not trying to doom and gloom, I'm just being real. this idea of this podcast is being truthful
Yeah.
to us and also to the audience that we
And
hoping to share.
also, there will always be a degree, right? We should be clear with the audience on this. You know, we will share our thoughts in terms of where we might be on a given day, right?
Yeah.
So you've had very difficult few days in terms of
Yeah.
sleep and all of that.
A very difficult few days ahead.
Yeah. So you may right now have certain thoughts on it, and this is what we're trying to do: share that raw. Now, my way of looking at that sort of things is, yes, those you do feel that, but the pros will generally outweigh that
100%.
if you get it right. And it's those pros that you're chasing. It's not just the financial reward, and it's not just the monetary value for what you create. It is those highs you get from signing new clients, delivering good quality work, working with amazing people, and the list goes on and on and on. When you hit those highs are higher than not only the lows that you have, but also those highs in any other formal work that you can have, in my opinion. I mean, I worked for a very long time in jobs and corporate and so on. So when I compare all of my achievements there versus the last 2 years, to me, there's no comparison.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. I agree. Even take our first episode, for example, in terms of highs. When I shared the trailer on Instagram, the post I put straight after in terms of stories was when I first started recording in my bedroom when I was living with my parents 6 years ago.
Yeah.
With the books. Actually, some of the books you probably see on here is probably that old, to be honest. And that's a journey, just purely for me. There's no kind of monetary value or you just signed this person. Just the growth of myself to go from recording on my iPhone back then to thankfully having a studio like this and then us talking about stuff. That's a huge win, just generally.
I would say entrepreneurship is a way to test yourself, in my opinion. You could disagree with it. Like not many other things can test you.
No.
And for certainly, I believe it's a way to grow like nothing in a career can ever give you, at least in the line of work I was in. Other people may well have that opportunity. For me personally, I did extremely well in my corporate career, but I don't think I faced anything like what I've faced in the last 2 years in terms of personal. That's then enabled the personal growth that I've had.
I agree. That kind of discomfort equals growth, and you don't get that level of discomfort like you do.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah, like you
That
run
is
your own
true.
business. It really is. So let's now look at another statement from our list. And I think I'm keen to get your thoughts on this one in particular because you deal with a level of daily stress that would break most people.
Ooh. Might be a bit controversial to say that, I suppose. I think it's both true to an extent, but I don't want to belittle other types of stress that might be out there that are people that other
I'm
people
going
are
to
going
on
through.
purpose in a minute.
Yeah. So I think, personally speaking, I think I agree with that, with the caveat that in the context of most things you'll ever deal with in a corporate career or any type of job, I would say, even the senior level, I think the level of stress you have as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is far higher than you would have that, and I think it is far higher than most people can deal with, because if they could, more people would be entrepreneurs and business owners. So I sort of agree with it with a bit of caveat. I don't want to belittle, your brain surgeons and heart surgeons and people like that out there who literally are playing with, dealing with people's lives. But I think with that caveat, I think I do agree with it to an extent.
No, I was going to say that, with the caveat of certain people who risk like that, and that is a whole different, and that's a huge respect to those who, now being a new father, you look at those who deliver the babies, those who looking after neonatals, those who are genuinely running brain surgeries to save people's lives. That's a whole different level.
Firefighters running
Exactly.
all that stuff, right?
Paramedics, and that's a profession that deserves more recognition, first of all, right? But looking purely on the risk and the responsibilities and the level of burden on business owners, because there isn't somebody else, you're the person.
Yeah.
So if somebody else who is an employee, no matter how high up, there is somebody else higher up they can report to, gain advice on. If they do something wrong, okay, they might potentially, let's just say, lose a job or something, and that can be catastrophic, 100%. But a business owner to a point where they have 5 or 6 people under them, sometimes more. Something happens to you, it is far greater of a detriment to the rest of the team, the rest of the clientele. And that's a big burden to cope with. And then for me, never having a team before until literally a couple of months ago. And I love it because I very much feel like even though I'm quite young, I feel like a father. I'm looking after them. Like, for example, one of them, for our podcast, by the way, that went out, the first one went out, a couple of days ago. And they went back to the office late at night to finish the work so we can put it out. I said, guys, take the morning off tomorrow. I appreciate it. And I love doing that because I love looking after the team. And they really appreciated that. But I'm responsible for them.
Yeah.
Just like I'm responsible now for my new daughter and wife.
I think it teaches you a lot about leadership, right? I think whether you want to or otherwise, or whether you see yourself or not, you become a leader. Especially if you start to grow a business where you've got more than just yourself in it, which again, like I said, is not really a business, in my opinion. But I think so when you are in that situation, you become a leader of people, and you have to lead and you have to look after a father figure and so on and so forth. That's why I can relate to that. And I think it's a fascinating topic. I would love to talk more about it.
Yeah, I don't see why we can't. Because in that regard, when I'm feeling like that and going through that, I look at when somebody else is senior level in another organization, they're not the founder, the business owner. They still can lean on someone who might be higher up or might be adjacent to them within the the C-suite. But when it is you, what are you gonna even lean on? You can lean on the wall if you want, right? That's all you got.
But let's think about that, Aamir, right? So as business owners, what's the solution to that? So if you're a business owner and you're feeling like that, what's the next step? How do you fix that? How do you come over that? How do you stop that loneliness or that feeling like you're like hitting that brick wall? How do you deal with that?
So I'll take parallels from the business owner and being a new father. Being a new father can also be very difficult, stressful. I've lent on close friends who are around me who are also fathers and get advice. Like, no, is this normal? Like, what do I do? Just because generally it's quite tough on you as a new person, where a lot of responsibilities are on you. Sometimes we feel, hey, can you cope? This is hard because for those who are business owners and being a father, that's not easy. You don't get paternity leave, especially if you're in that growth phase. You have no choice. The reason why I bring that up is that I lent on people who are in that same boat or who have been.
Yeah.
And I feel for business owners, having other business owner friends is I wouldn't say useful. I genuinely feel it is integral and vital.
I think it's vital. That's what I was trying to get at. I was trying to bring that up. And I think just to stop feeling like you're alone and you don't have anybody you can rely on, I think that's what you need to do. Because there will be people who are in that situation. Right. So we hope that our audience gets a bit of a flavor of that and they become part of our community.
Yeah, rightly so.
We have those chats. We both separately have other people in that situation where we will have that conversation with. So when you're hitting that difficult patch or the patch where you're not sure what's happening and you don't have anyone to lean on, yes, the buck does stop with you as a business owner. There's no getting away from that. But that doesn't mean you have to face that on your own. You can have mentors, you can have coaches, you can have colleagues, people who are doing contemporaries, let's call them, are people who are in the similar phase, beyond, below, behind, whatever, right? And you can lean on those people. So it's very important to create that sort of community around yourself.
Agreed. Even to the point where I think co-working and like building together, right? Where you can sit together in a coffee shop and do some work and bounce off each other. I sorry to interrupt, but what I was saying earlier is that one of the reasons why I started podcasts is to have that. Like generally, I started because when we started working together, and I said, you know what, why didn't we do it? It's because then I have someone I could talk to every month. Genuinely, everyone's listening now. It's because then we can sit down and the gems we've had, the conversation have been amazing because we've sat down because we want to sit down and provide value, but we end up having a chat about what we probably wouldn't have at length because we're so busy running our businesses and whatever. So part of it is also selfishly for us, obviously by virtue of helping other people. But I think it goes to show for those who are new to business, starting out, those who are in there and probably don't realize, you have to find people who are within there you get along with, lean on them, bounce on them, because they will understand, other people will not. People will say, why are you working on the weekends? Why are you stressed? And do I understand, because from their point of view, they don't know any other. For them, it's odd. It's weird.
I can give a fantastic example of that, which is like, until maybe 5-6 months ago, when I would work on the weekends or when I would work my Fridays and all that stuff, um, my wife would go, "What are you doing?" And all that sort of stuff. However, now that her business, she's focusing more on her own business. So she's got her own e-commerce business and she's doing well, mashallah. And as that's growing and she's now really getting into it, I mean, she's pretty much ran it as a lifestyle business for the first 5 years, but now she's kind of really taken an interest. Now she understands what it takes because she's now in that position herself. So there's nothing. So my point there is, now when I do it, I don't get that pushback because she's having to do it. And then the point isn't that, oh, you can't say to me because you're doing it. The point is, by being in that situation, you understand what someone else is going through. So if you are talking to people who are in that situation, that's what I'm trying to get at. That's a good space to be in. You can't talking to people who've not experienced that and not in business. You might find the odd person who might get it and be able to add value. Generally speaking, you need to talk to people who've been there, done it, or are at the same time doing it.
No, I agree. I agree. It's interesting how there are so many parallels between us as fathers,
Yeah.
as us as founders. There should be another off chat founders and
Unorthodox
fathers.
fathers.
Unorthodox fathers.
No, maybe.
So let's move on to
Let's go on to the next one then. So we've got one here. So most of the time, no one is coming to save you. The moment you start waiting for permission is the moment you actually become a founder.
straight off the bat is the notion of taking responsibility. When I mean that, and I say this is going to sound very odd, sorry, but it'll make sense in a second. In the most caring and loving way, nobody cares. And that's, again, you might disagree. But how I look at it, how I approach it is, I can't have the mindset that, oh, someone's going to be there, because that's a very unsafe, very unhealthy foundation to have. If somebody comes and helps, that's great, and people will, by will of God, people will potentially. But I look at it a point that nobody cares, because at the end of the day, it's your business. You have to crack on. You're either responsible to your clients, or you're responsible to your staff, you're responsible to your dependents, or whatever. And that's your shoulders to bear. You have to figure it out. And if you get support along the way, that is a bonus. But back to kind of the statement, when you mean nobody's going to save you, it doesn't mean that nobody will not be there. But you can't have this very soft, reactive mindset that, okay, I'll do this and then I'll make sure someone's, just to hold my hand, or I'll do this, but just with, you kind of put one step in sometimes, whether you started a business or whether you're in the thing, right? But that's the scary part of it, where you sometimes have to take a risk and nobody's there to save you potentially, whether it's to expand the business or something.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely, and I would also say that I would go further. Look, people, I said earlier, mentors, coaches, and all of that, but to a very significant and maybe large extent, you do need to have the mindset. This is down to me. If you really want to, in my opinion, if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, if you really want to kind of get somewhere with that, beyond just a lifestyle thing, and really want to grow and scale it and grow it and have it change your life and the lives of those around you, you have to be that thick-headed to go, this is down to me. I can have my coach, I can have a mentor, but my experience, and this isn't a slight on anyone or anything like that, but it's like, it is down to you. Roll your socks up, suck it in, sort it out, get on with it.
Crack on.
After the will of Allah, put your work in. Yes, the outcome will be what it will be, but after him, it's down to you, right? So he'll save you, but people generally will not. They'll share their thoughts, they'll share their experience. No one's going to come and muck in with you.
No. And it's that softness, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize does erode, not because you want to, just by virtue of being an entrepreneur, that you have that grind, that grit, that fortitude, patience, perseverance, all of these qualities that are forged into you, that, like with what we're going through, or what I had to go through, I had to figure out.
And I think a very significant skill that you need to have as an entrepreneur in this particular context, and just generally quite widely, is being able to problem solve from the littlest things to the biggest of things, including your whole business. If it turns into a problem, you got to solve it, right? if you can have a little problem that you need to sort out to get things moving here, but your whole business can become a problem at some stage. And if that's the thing, you need to even get to a point you gotta solve that. So I think, yeah, I'm firmly of the opinion that you've got to have that as a core skill. Like, I'm gonna solve this. If I don't, I'm gonna keep trying until I do solve it.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. For some reason the imagery came into mind that you're on the boat, there's a hole, but you still have to swim and fix the hole at the same time. And honestly, when you have a problem, you don't let everything pauses and you have to deal. You still have to manage everything and deal with the problem at the same time. Whilst your things are stressful, you have to find a way to focus.
I've got David Goggins in my head.
Oh yeah,
Carry the boat, son.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because of that,
The walk on water.
carry the boat, son. Who's gonna carry the
And
boat?
there are levels to this, right? In terms of the notion of not giving up, and that's one thing as well. When this notion, nobody's coming to save you. There are many times you will understandably want to give up because it's too much stress, too much cope. Things are not going well. It's just, but you have to find a way.
I mean, I wake up many days. I feel like I get up and I'm like, what if I was just doing something that was not so stressful, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm never sitting there wishing that, I didn't do what I'm doing. But the thought that crosses your mind that, what if I don't want to demean any job, so I'm not gonna use any examples. But what if I was just doing that and I didn't have any this
Like
stress,
all of this,
that?
I wouldn't have to deal with
Yeah.
if I did this.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have all of this benefits. if you didn't.
That's a notion,
Right.
It
So,
comes.
I snap out of it like that. Honestly speaking,
yeah,
I snap
yeah.
out of it like that. It comes in here and it just
It
goes
goes out.
straight back out.
It's human nature.
But you do go through that phase. You're lying awake at night or in the morning and you're sitting there going, I wish I didn't have this commute from my bed to my desk downstairs.
yeah.
What if I was, going somewhere far to do something else, right? And but you quickly get over that because you then see the rewards of your hard work.
Yeah. And I think also to add before we move on to the next one is you see the reward of your hard work on how you have grown. I look at it, especially with my own growth journey so far, the how it's affected me in a positive and negative manner, as anything does, is remarkable as to what I'm able to cope with. Like I did before doing the PhD days, obviously now, but you see the effect quite significantly on your ability to cope with things. It's far greater, than many others, and I think entrepreneurship from a self-development point of view is one of the best things you could do.
I think look, well, you go deeper than that. Life is about growth, right? Life is about, going from being younger to being older, and you make that journey, and it happens to you, or you can make it happen. And I suppose at a deeper level, entrepreneurship is a significant part of that growth. It gives you. I mean, I certainly look back at it, and I'm like, you know what? I am absolutely blessed to be in the position I'm in, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I'd want to do more of it.
Yeah. Would you say that it's stressful, it's chaotic, it's sometimes, all sorts of emotions comes in, but I find it strangely addictive.
Yeah.
I find now the notion of graft, as I did before, but now even more so.
Well, there are times where if I get through my day
One more.
quickly, and I'm sitting there at even at say 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and I've done everything I need to do. Back in the day, this would be like 1 or 2 o'clock, right? Yeah. Now if I'm sitting there at 5 o'clock, and if I don't genuinely have anything to do that day, I start to feel withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, it becomes addictive.
But look, in coming back to reality, that isn't the healthy bit. Look, nobody starts, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't start being an entrepreneur to chase this position. I did it to give myself freedom across the board of lots of things. Now, I know right now I need to go through these phases to work so hard to get to whatever it looks like. Now, I feel like part of that journey is changing some of that outlook.
Yes.
What does that freedom look like? What does that success look like? What does me doing what in my day as a successful entrepreneur look like? Before it was 4-day work weeks and X, Y, and Z and finishing by 4 o'clock and all of this. Now it's like, I may not finish for any part of the day, but if I'm able to sit with my kids, my wife, do the things I want to do with them, still manage my workload and everything else, pretty happy with that.
Yeah,
I
it's
might
funny.
change, but I'm pretty happy for now. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it's remarkable how I don't think I've never been interested, having those materialistic goals a lot of people might think of, but you see a lot on social media where
You don't want to drive that Ferrari then?
no, I'd rather play tennis. That gives me more joy than that. But the reason why I mentioned that is for what we do, we take on that stress, those become addicted to it, that grind, that obsession. Like for me personally, so then future soon I can just go on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock and take my wife and daughter to a coffee shop.
Exactly.
That
You live life on your terms, right?
that is worth the pain, and it is a considerable amount of pain. We know that we mentioned offline, but that is worth this.
Yeah, 100%.
10 times over.
Yeah. Like I can choose to today. This is hard work today, right?
Yeah,
It's been
it's
a
a graft.
grafting day. If you saw the bloopers from my earlier recording session, you
Saw that picture you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
you'll be dying of laughter. How much I struggled with my videos today, but I can choose to be here today.
It's a choice.
This is my choice. I've chose to structure my work week this week. Today be here, tomorrow be in Newbury. While I'm juggling my work, I'm choosing to travel on the train. I'm choosing to drive. I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to do that. I have no one else I need to run that past, probably other than my wife, but that's a separate story.
Save
But
yourself.
do you see what I mean? And that to me is worth everything else.
Yeah.
Right. To me, it's worth the pain. I don't really look at it. We're
Yeah.
different in that. Maybe we're in different parts of the journey or not. Whatever I feel like, I don't call it pain. To me, it's not pain. I enjoy it.
No,
I
it's
enjoy the stress. I enjoy that situation. And to me, it never feels like pain. To me, it feels like an opportunity to grow. And going back to the points we were discussing earlier, I watched a video of Alex Hormozi the other day, and he was talking to an entrepreneur who's got 4 million annual recurring revenue, and the company is running by itself, doesn't need him, and he feels like he's not making best use of his time. And so it's like, okay, what do you do? Right. So he's got to a point where he's the ultimate definition of a lot of people's success, right? But he's sitting there going, what's my meaning here? What am I doing here? This is like, am I like, and it was really interesting that the advice Alex gave him was to kind of, well, if you're not fulfilled, you got to find your purpose. But part of that advice was really that. And for us, obviously, we have a greater purpose as Muslims. But as a business person, it's interesting to see even getting to that ultimate success makes you then question, at the very least for us anyway, questions your purpose in the business. Right? Your life purpose is your life purpose, worship God and so on. But like the business purpose to me was fascinating.
Yeah. Do you think that it evolves? Because I think a lot of people who, let's say, have not started a business, a large part of them would say that's the goal. Get to a point where you're earning.
But I think when you go through that journey, that goal will
changes.
change.
That's
for
what
me personally as well.
Yeah.
When I started, it was all about 4-day work weeks
Yeah.
and living my life on my term and Friday breakfast with my wife, going to Jummah and not having to, do anything else. Now, obviously, those things still stick, but I'm like, 10 o'clock meeting on a Friday. Yeah, I can fit that in.
Yeah.
10:30, 11:30,
That's
12:30, just about the cutoff.
That's relative.
After that, I got to get to Jummah because you got to stop at that point.
Yeah.
But that's shifted because yeah, I was happy with that when I started, and then quickly I got addicted to the grind, the success, the growth, and you feel like your potential grows in front of you. You feel like you not just you grow as a person, you see your own potential growing, and then at least for me personally, it's like if I don't go and try to keep chasing that curve, keep growing in a healthy way, then I'm not fulfilling that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's become my driver.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to feel like could have done something there, could have done more, right? And that can come in different ways, shape and forms. Like I'm involved in the charity that I work with, and to me, like when I'm able to do more there, I want to do more there with my wife, my kids, my parents. Like all of these things start to kind of merge into everything, really.
Yeah.
I don't know what point I was trying to make there. I think it probably doesn't make sense to anyone listening, but you'll probably understand what I'm saying.
No,
It all becomes your purpose, all kind of merges in, and you just kind of do more and you do a lot. And look, don't get me wrong, you do have to step back and you do have to look at your plans and you have to look at where you want to be in the future. You don't just want to be in the grind and you're not getting a return for it and your business. All of these things are worth it if your business is growing. If as much as we, we have our non-monetary purposes and this, that, and the other, we, we do want that reward. And if those things are not growing, you should take a step back and have a look.
It's as much as we, some people glamorize the other side, as much as we showcase the struggles, you still have to make sure things are growing, as we do with any job. But I want to move on to a point that we didn't get a chance to talk about just because of time. Like, even though I have to leave soon because my wife needs me because the baby is going to be a struggle during the night. Again, real life for entrepreneur. We're here doing work, but just because you work doesn't mean you haven't got a life away from that. And it's not just me, many others. But the point I do make sure that we want to talk about is we both of us respectively come from a background of no business experience.
Yeah.
But to a large part of people, that might have been an assumption that we have a handicap or we have a disadvantage. But I was going as far as to say that it was an unfair advantage to not have a business background to do what we do. Do you agree?
I do. I think it's an advantage because you're not tied down by any conventions or norms or preconceived ideas on how to run or grow a business. We're pretty much learning on the job. We're growing. I feel that for myself, like I'm learning something new. I'm pushing myself to learn something new. And I'm trying to learn from those people who've done it before. But starting in a place where we had a blank canvas to work with, I think that's it is an unfair advantage to an extent, I think.
The reason I wanted to bring it up, it was more from my perspective, the notion of it is a painful way to learn, but it is a very powerful way to learn. For example, what I mean by that is the mistakes you make, the errors, things that cost you, getting told off by clients because you've made a joint that you would have done if you didn't. But you then remember those things massively. And I think by virtue, we didn't have these 7 to 8 frameworks and hurdles at the start that hinders a lot of people in terms of growth and getting stuff done, getting your MVP or doing some work, charging people for it, getting feedback. And then we mentioned that the last time. Because we don't have that, we just got on with it. And obviously
You just dive in.
you just dive in, just got on with it, and then you figure it out. And obviously mine coming from pure necessity. I had no choice. So I didn't think, okay, I need to look at this and this. There's certain elements that you learn the hard way. And I mentioned about the whole partnership thing with the old business. And I didn't know that. Okay, now I know, right? And I do think that is what led to a lot of speed in terms of in a very difficult manner because you're learning by trial and error. But when you get to then a certain point where things are, that's when the business advice starts to become useful.
So would you say it's better to dive in and work it out as you go along? Or should you have a plan in the first place? Looking back,
even with what I do, I think obviously with context, you look at everything with a grey area. But for me, looking at how I went from pure necessity, I had no choice. Could I have spent more time learning things? Obviously, you really learn by doing, and then you figure it out. Fine, but could I have spent more time reading some of these books? Everything you mentioned, don't read the book. Do best way to learn business is to do business, and I agree. But there is an element of just studying a bit to help streamline it, and it's that nuance, that balance.
I personally think it's more. It's for me. It's less a case of like studying, or it's more a case of what is it you want to do, your why, your how, your what. Those things matter. Whether you've done it before, or whether you've got a fancy business plan or not, they matter less. I think they will help. I mean, for me personally, I didn't like jump in blindly from employment into my business. I thought about it, I planned about it, but I did just kind of then go right straight in, deep end, go right. Very little savings, very little like runway for not being able to make money and all that stuff, right? People say you're supposed to have 6 months of savings. I'm not recommending this. I'd probably a month, if that.
Yeah.
Like, so, but I did sit down and I did work with a coach beforehand. I looked at my sales pitch, I looked at my offer, I looked at my pricing. I did look at those things. Now, did I go and learn about those things? Not necessarily. I worked my way through it in real life scenarios with the help of someone, and then sort of dived in and tested it full time. So there's a little bit of nuance to that. I think coming from a non-business background and whatever, however you class our backgrounds, I think it led to us being where we are. But I would nuance it to say, if you're thinking about going into business, or if you're in business and you're thinking about doing something else, it is a necessity to sit back and think about what you're going to do. If you're able to find the time to plan and stuff, do it. Now, the reason, however, I'm trying to toe a fine line here is because these sort of analysis paralysis kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Death by numbers, all that sort of stuff, right? Don't get hung up about that. You kind of you do need to sort of dive in, work on it, figure it out, move on, get your feedback, learn, grow, do it again, do it differently, all that sort of stuff. So that's where I'm kind of getting at. Like, you need to find that right balance, and the balance is more towards by jumping in than it is towards going and learning. You don't need a fancy course, you don't need a degree or anything like that. But what you do need is, what is it you're trying to do? Do you have a market for it? How are you going to sell it? All of that sort of stuff. You need to think it through, because you don't want to sit there day one, laptop brand new open. Yeah, I'm working now. No one knows about it. It's
Yeah.
pointless.
No, I do think that there's an initial buffer of understanding that's needed, and there's now much in terms of YouTube and social media to get you going. Telling you how do you start, and what's your MVP, whatever, all of these things that you can learn. I do think that ratio evolves. So I think in the early part you're doing a lot of the do, and then you figure it out. But I think as you're scaling, you're doing less of the do, and you're doing more of the refinements by virtue of the mentors and the coaches, which leads me on to the notion of finding the right mentor is one of the most underrated superpowers you can have as a business owner. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Couldn't. I think that's the end of the discussion there.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that the problem you do have is it's hard to find those people.
That's what I'm gonna refer to.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It is absolutely a superpower, and it absolutely is something that's going to really skyrocket your growth if you get it right. But I think finding those people isn't as easy as just, it is as easy as asking someone or
But
talking
I
to
think the
someone,
right person, yeah.
but finding that person is not that easy.
It's funny because when you look at from my understanding, the concept of many businesses is
Yeah.
okay, you've got a business because that business provides a solution or software or product that's safer, quicker, faster to do something. Either improves your health, saves you time, solves a problem, whatever. And that's obviously how a lot of businesses grow. It's funny that a lot of the business coaches improve your speed, time, refinements. So they're like obviously their own business itself. But a large part of those right people is to allow you to function better.
Yeah.
Figure out what are the gaps that you're clearly not identified. You're too busy on running on one thing. But I think the reason why I wanted to bring that up as a question is that I regret not having someone to talk to back then. I'm very grateful now I have someone I can talk to and many others. But in that early phase, I think I would have been able to increase the speed of learning and development far quicker having somebody to guide me or give a bit of advice. And that doesn't have to be a mentor or coach, but I use the term key people of influence, right? If I gone out to more networking events, if I could back then, I could have got more insights and gems. Like, and the case, give you just a direct example. Before we saw November time, right? Started working. A month later, you were telling me about Adfin. It's not sponsored. Adfin, if you want, you can have
Get in touch.
But there was a notion that I was manual invoicing through like a PDF. And you said, you know what, you need a system to you can manage it all, direct debits and stuff like that. I said, yeah, that would really help cash flow. And I wasn't aware of this thing. As soon as I did that, it made a little bit life a lot easier because I knew, okay, if I do this direct debit, start this on the coming then. I don't have to chase the person. I click like 2-3 buttons and it's gone. The link is gone. It looks a little bit more professional. You can have your branding.
Yeah.
That was a genuine piece of gem that I would have not got from a book or whatever if I didn't have someone to talk to. And I think the reason why I wanted to bring that up is that is a direct example of how getting the right support in those right domains can cause astronomical return on investment or leap and bounds for your business.
And I think there's a difference there, isn't it? That when we talk about non-business backgrounds, and then we kind of now talking about mentorship and treading, going down a well-trodden path rather than trying to create your own path through the wilderness. They're 2-3 different things, right? And one doesn't mean another. It doesn't mean like you don't have to have any knowledge or you shouldn't have any knowledge or any plans. And equally, it doesn't mean you're doing it on your own, right? So there are nuances to these things as we're trying to explain it. But obviously, ultimately, we're sharing our journey.
But I want to finish off with some just insights as to, as part of this podcast, we're sharing overall journeys. This today, for example, it's been tough, been challenging, it's been frustrating with many of the things we have. But we've somehow got to this point where we've now done all of the stuff we wanted to do. By hook or crook, we've figured it out. Right? Tech not working, things dying, overheating, whatever, but we figure out. Would you say that's a great depiction of how entrepreneurship life is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's full of problems and challenges and whatever you want to call it. But like today, you're gonna get to the end of the day. You're gonna get through it.
You have to figure it out.
You don't really have a choice, which is the fun part.
I think that's how I want to end on, is that sometimes it sounds scary that you don't have a choice, but it's quite
liberating.
Quite liberating. So you have to do it anyway.
I look at today, and I look at, did I like all of the videos that we recorded? Was I happy with myself? No. But am I beating myself down about it? No. Because part of entrepreneurship is trialing, maybe failing, iterating for sure, but definitely going again.
Yeah. But it's like
Till next time, literally, right?
You get a punch in the face. Yeah. Stand back up. And to conclude, I was this close to telling you after the shorts. I don't know if I got the energy. And I'm obviously going to also have had no sleep. To give you context, by the way, I mean, we want to share transparency. At 3:30 in the morning, I send you amendments on the scripts. 3:30 in the morning, I haven't slept. So from 5 o'clock this morning, at the time of recording, till 8 is when I slept. And then I got everything ready, then leg day here. And we've been, from 9:15, we've been at it. And now when I go home now, my wife needs, I will be looking after my daughter, 5-6-week-old daughter, for the rest of the evening. And then when they sleep, I'll probably about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I'll be carrying on working for tomorrow. That's the life. You want to sign up for it, sign up for it. There's a lot of benefits, a lot of growth, but that's the challenge. And I wish those who have any questions, drop them down in the comments. We can also answer them in our next episode. But part of our journey is to give you genuine, real life depictions of the struggles of entrepreneurship, as well as the highs, of course.
Tell us what you heard today. Tell us what you thought. Ask us any questions. We're here to just talk about things and our journeys.
And if you see someone, ask him what that question was that he thought.
I don't know if I'll remember it. I probably will. Like you said, stop the cameras rolling. I'll probably remember it. But
there were posts on social media.
But no, it was a good one.
It was a good one.
It was a very raw episode today. Probably not as upbeat as the first one, but we're not scripting these. We're kind of giving them raw. So
I'll share
more of this.
Stay tuned for episode 3.
If you like this, subscribe. Follow the channel.
Do that thing with the button, and then the thing goes, press start.
Ding.
And then tell other people, and then tell them to press start. And then just keep doing that. That'll be really useful. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Alhamdulillah.